is relevant here is extending a smart-like environment to non-smartphones. This is about putting, leaving the application on the server, and then rendering the page rendering the screenshot to the phone. And basically, what it does, it moves some of the processing off the phone. So there are some initiatives which are using that to overcome fragmentation, and that's fragmentation when you get outside, mainly when you get outside of the smartphone environment into sort of more feature phones and browsers. And Silent Communications is an example of another company which has written software where you would load their software onto the full range of handsets in the market. They say they can cover the vast range of handsets, and effectively that becomes an abstraction environment. So you then download an application which uses this software that previously been downloaded to activate the phone and make the phone do what the new piece of software wants it to. So it's a sort of a standard environment which is downloaded to these to phones. So what's the effect of that? The effect of that is that really one of the things that's happening here is the iPhone is becoming a sandbox environment. Well, I mean, obviously there are far more iPhone apps than there are applications for other phones. Much the reason for that is because you have a few iterations of the OS, a fairly standard form factor and functionality, and it's very easy to write something to a fairly large addressable base. And what then happens is once something's proven itself to be successful, it gets ported off into Android and other OS. But it makes sense a lot of the time to start in an iPhone environment. Some things count against that in terms of the restrictions that Apple place on things. So there are reasons to actually start off writing things in an Android environment and then port from there if it makes sense. But generally, I think a lot of people come to the same conclusion. It makes sense to start writing for iPhone and then porting to other handsets. That's the end of the introductory slides I wanted to go through, just to sort of provide a quick run-through of the issue. For asking for questions or comments or debate. I mean, it's meant to be a workshop, so I mean, I'm sure some people here are developers and again know a lot more about this than I do. Please.
If you go back to the last slide for a moment, the bottom bullet about Google exerting more control.
Yeah.
What impact do you think that's going to have on this iPhone sandbox concept?
I think the iPhone will remain a sandbox for some time. The thing, what Google, if Google exert more control over, right now, there's a lot of different versions of Google around, and the way that those versions of Google, of Android, are updated on your handset is they're filtered out through your handset manufacturer. If Google take that directly, or take control of it, the code base directly, and stipulate that it has to be updated directly from their servers, they can ensure that wherever possible, handsets are running the latest software. They don't have to wait for it to sort of filter out through the market. And for instance, the Xperias, which Sony Ericsson launched in version 1.6, when version 2.2 is in the market. Presumably, there's functionality that Sony Ericsson wants to add to the 2.2 version before they release it to the phones. Presumably, they want to tailor it. They can't do that if the releases, if the updates are coming directly from Android. So what you get is it reduces the potential for an OEM to differentiate with Android, because they can't they, you know, if the code comes out and updates, you know, updates onto the phone very quickly, they haven't got time to react, to redo their customizations, etc. in their phone. In their phones, it reduces their ability to differentiate, but it increases the standardization of the Android environment, which I think is probably what Google's looking for. So I guess it makes Android more attractive to developers and less attractive to operators because it commoditizes them.
I was just going to say, I mean, developers may like it better, but in some ways it may reduce the amount of take-up of Android, because a lot of the growth that's happened this year, especially in emerging economies, has been small manufacturers taking lower versions of Android, like 1.5, putting on a really cheap device and selling it at lower price points. And if Google starts rolling updates and taking some of that control back, then everyone's going to have to ship the highest version of Android on the highest spec device. And I think a lot of people may go back to, well, something else. Not necessarily Symbian, I don't know, but you know, it's hard to say right now. And then of course there's Bada, which it was supposed to have a high and mid-range. So, you know, mid-range Bada might be better off than a high-end Android that you're stuck with.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work out, but it may be that I guess Google needs to consider, the possibility of introducing a lower spec Android for that exact reason. You know, the growth markets in terms of smartphones at the moment are the developing markets, and it would make sense to do that. I don't know. It's a good point. It's control of the code base rather than control of what you do with it.
So you think that openness in terms of, I mean, I see it as a disadvantage in the iPhone and an advantage on the Android from a developer point of view.
I can't see that changing.
Okay, but do you think Apple would do something else? You know, would it open up access, or would it make it more easier to access than mechanical stuff? As opposed to this? What's your view?
Again, I'd appreciate other views on that. I think there's probably people here that know more about Apple environment than I do. My suspicion is that Apple have identified, definitely have identified a remarkably profitable niche, and I can't see them upsetting that. It's very high margin. I think they're going to be quite happy with that. I can't see them chasing after the volumes by downgrading the experience and getting a few more sales. It's Apple and RIM that make the profits in this market at the moment. I can't see them wanting to change that. Sorry, you had a...
Perhaps a naive question about the browser fragmentation.
Yeah.
Most browsers seem to be moving towards WebKit. And
yep.
My question, which I don't know the answer to that, is to what extent does that mean that there's not much fragmentation?
The fragmentation is a lot less. But it is fragmentation of 19 different types of browser is less than the fragmentation of 19 different types of OS, no question about it. Or the impact is less, but the fragmentation of browsers was something that was cited to me by Dave Roberts, CEO of PopCap, in terms of writing games in widget environments. He said, you still get those. You still get those issues, and he says he gets them in fixed environments as well. So that was the view of a man who writes games. But that's a type of software which is designed to push hardware.
Yeah, that seems so for general utility.
For general use, I mean, over time, I can see widgets and the WAC platform being able to address more and more of the needs of mobile users and mobile developers. And I can see it reducing fragmentation. And it's going to be, it's specifically games. It's the things that push the hardware, which it won't be able to support as well as a native application, I think.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that, over the last couple of weeks, we looked at where a lot of the devices came from. Previously we had, many different handsets with many different OSs and various, if we go back, say, about 2003 to the last couple of years, where it was very, very fragmented. From what you're presenting here, is it looks very much the same. Nothing has really changed. Albeit we hear a couple of platforms, kind of Android and Apple, but it seems to be that
No,
in the industry are still around.
It is incredibly fragmented. The thing is that managing that fragmentation is far, far easier than managing fragmentation in a Symbian environment, because of the way the code's written, and the way that the code, the way that the application interacts with the phone. It's much easier to deal with fragmentation in that environment. The other thing about Android is it's relatively new. So you haven't got 5-year-old Android phones in the way that you got 5-year-old, I don't know when S60 came out, but you're still going to have devices which are that old with very different capabilities around, which hasn't yet caught up with Android.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Jim.
No problem.